Hey, welcome to the Halos in the Infield flagship podcast with your hosts, Todd Fox, Fernando Mendez, and Courtney from Riverside. Okay. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Hey, welcome into another episode of Halos in the Infield, the flagship podcast with your host, Todd Fox, and the other host of the show.
The Lone Star Halo, Fernando, finger guns.
He's here as we're talking live with the Angels in baseball this season. As postseason does not feature the Angels for the 9th consecutive year, so we've been a little quiet on the shows, but we're going to be ramping it up, and we're going to tell you why at the end of the show. And then we're also going to get into some news and notes, but first we're going to talk postseason and how it affects the Angels and so on and so on. So, Fernando, kick it off, my man.
Well, I don't want to sit here and waste too much time on the fact that it's Diamondbacks versus Texas Rangers in the World Series because everyone predicted that. You know, we all had that on our bingo cards. So we'll skip that part. I want to talk about the absolute catastrophe that was the LA Dodgers, the Atlanta Braves, the Philadelphia Phillies. You want to talk about three teams that should have had zero issue not only taking care of the Diamondbacks, but convincing them to walk behind the shed like they're Lenny in Of Mice and Men and just shooting him in the head. But they didn't do that. They didn't do that at all. Hopefully some people got that Mice of Men reference, or that was just, an
exterminator joke, but no.
Yeah, I want to pet the bunny, George.
Well, you could throw Baltimore in there a little bit, but not as much because they're inexperienced. But they had a great record too.
Well, but see, they faced the Texas Rangers. And here's the thing. The Texas Rangers are showing what happens not only when you get a good manager, but when you get a great manager, and what happens when you get a front office who wholeheartedly believes in that coaching staff. That's what happens. That's an organization who's doing things the right way. They hire Bruce Bochy. They convinced Bruce Bochy to come out of retirement. Forget about hiring him. They talked him out of retirement. Convinced him that Texas was the place. And one thing that I told you guys in our group chat during the offseason was, I forgot where I was. I think I might have been like at a very, very early season Texas Rangers game. And they, you know how they'll show like Angels pregame show sometime when you're around the stadium. And so they did that with the Texas Rangers. And I was using the bathroom or whatever, and it was like the interview, like playing in the intercom speakers, whatever. And they were like, "Hey, Bruce, how does this team stack up to the teams you coached in San Francisco?" And he said what I thought at the time was the stupidest thing I ever heard, and we all laughed about it. He was like, "These teams are really similar. This Texas Rangers team is just like those Giants teams." And I told you guys about it. We all laughed about it in the group chat. We're like, yeah, okay, buddy. He was right.
Yeah, the funny thing about it is we've been screaming all year about a manager who will play the fundamentals, who do the fundamentals, bring that old school feel, but not necessarily, he'll run with some analytics, but not all of it, not even maybe 50%, but he's a guy that's going to keep the locker room either loose or strict at the same time. It's just what we've been talking about. What we needed here was balance. And it's funny. We did say, though, as a group, that we were envious and jealous the fact that Texas was able to snag Bochy and we had to hold on to Nevin. Mm-hmm. But as the year progressed, I personally am going to eat crow like I did with Suarez. And I'll say that from the beginning, I laughed at it because I felt with Bochy and Texas, it's going to take a little time. I don't think they're going to flip the script. They've got a few good players in place. They got a few free agents in place. I get it, but they're about a year away. They might make the playoffs, but they're a year away. And as they won,
and we thought they were like a year away from making the playoffs. We didn't think they were a year away from a deep playoff run. We were probably like 2 or 3 years away from that.
Yeah, we thought about a couple months in, this team's going to make the playoffs, but they're not going to shine. They're probably going to get ousted pretty quick, and they'll learn from that. Bochy will continue to build, and they're just going to be a force to be reckoned with because the rookie aspect of it, and you were telling us all season, hey, man, The Texas guys haven't even brought up their kids yet. Like they're not ready yet. They're not gonna be ready yet. They're gonna roll with what they got, and I don't think they have enough. I was saying the same thing, but I was on the end of saying, hey, they're gonna blow everything. They're not gonna make the playoffs. They're gonna blow the division. I was half right, but who cares at this point? None of the teams left in the Final Four were division winners anyway.
Yeah, and actually, I don't throw the kind of stuff out here often. We don't flex about people we have conversations with. But like, I was talking with Ty, and him and I were just messaging back and forth, and we were talking about like the fact that this matchup is so crazy. Mm-hmm. And he was like, I'm not that surprised. Both teams have very, very good AAA teams. The Texas Rangers are, what are they? The Round Rock Express, I believe. And then for the Arizona Diamondbacks, I believe it's Reno. I forgot what their name are. The Aces, maybe?
Yeah, or weren't they the UFOs? Something like that?
No. I think they used to be Vegas before they turned into the Aviators. I don't know. Yeah. Anyway, so I'm pretty sure it's Reno and Round Rock Express. I'm sure people will correct me. That's fine. Go ahead. But anyway, Ty had said, like, these are two very, very good AAA systems. Not only that, the thing is, like, they're not just top heavy, because like the Angels had a very solid AA team, with the Trash Pandas, but that's all they were. They were a solid AA team, eventually trickled down to the 66ers being successful. So now you're kind of starting to see that flush a little bit. But like, these are two organizations that the minor league from the top down have been invested in properly. It's a front office that believes in their entire staff from top to bottom, from the GMs all the way down to the bullpen catchers for the rookie ball teams. And that's what happens when you invest in your front office, invest in your staff, invest in your minor league system. You have these pleasant surprises. And the thing is, the Diamondbacks and the Rangers aren't going anywhere anytime soon.
Agreed. With what Chris Young has done there, and I like a point that you brought up earlier that we talked about this year, either on the post game or on the podcast, was the fact that for winning clubs like the Atlanta Braves, who they didn't get it done this year, but what they have in common with right now the Orioles and the Rangers is ownership's all in, but they stay out of the bit, of the day-to-day business. They let the general managers, the team presidents do their thing. They're on board as well, the general managers and team presidents, with the manager. And the manager's got a good staff in place. And I like what the Rangers have done. And I'll even throw some, as Dusty Baker retired today, his staff was great too in Houston. Say what you want about them, but when Justin Tucker in a 4-2 game, they're trailing Texas Rangers, although they lost the series, Tucker was putting down a bunt. They do the little things that the Angels team would never even think of. Little things to catch a team off guard. Have faith in your 25th guy. The guy that they got that hit his first home run in 8 years. He came up there with a huge walk before Altuve hit the 3-run homer. So you have stuff like that, and you have good coaches in place. And a team like Arizona, who had the least amount of home runs of any of these postseason teams, is up there just trying to get base hits and get contact. The Phillies, for their credit too, they mashed the ball with your Bryce Harpers, your Trey Turners, Schwarbers, players like that. But they also have guys that can get on base. They were getting a lot of hits as well. That's how they beat the Atlanta Braves. So the final four teams that were in it were just, hey, they're going to pitch us outside. We're going to swing the other way. They're going to pitch us inside. We're going to pull the ball. And that's what you love to see. A lot of these teams, to me, got away from the analytics late in the postseason. The teams that stuck to the analytics or pushed the envelope with the analytics, Dodgers, you got your ass kicked. So I like it. I just wish more teams would understand that analytics is ruining the game. They got to stick to the basics, the fundamentals. This game has been around 50 years or more. You can't change the game that much. You know what I mean? You still throw it from the same dimensions, from the pitching mound to the batter's box, and just play the game. I mean, if you want to throw some analytics in there, fine, but don't overwhelm your team with it, because a lot of these teams take the bat out of their good hitters' hands. They don't give them a chance. They don't play to their strengths. I think that's what killed the Angels this year. You don't let these guys play.
Yeah, I mean, you have to give these two teams every single shake. You have to give them every single tip of the cap possible for doing it the right way. Like you said, they don't get in each other's way. They let their baseball guys make baseball decisions. Their managers aren't afraid to burst the envelope. They push the envelope, but they don't burst it. They don't go too far in either direction. And that's really the biggest mistake that a lot of teams are making nowadays. They go too heavy on one side. There is a balance. Baseball is all about balance. There is a time to be strict. And you know what? There is time to enjoy some time off in the clubhouse. There is sometimes where you don't need your guys to take batting practice. Like, you know what, guys? This is our 10th straight game. You know, we haven't had a day off. We're going to skip batting practice today. There's a time and a place. You know, you have the guys like Joe Madden who's like, hey, no problem, bro. You know, let's go smoke out in the Scooby-Doo van, you know? And then you don't want your guy to be too much of an enforcer because we've seen what happens with that too. There is a very, very healthy blend that exists. And, you know, for whatever reason, guys like Bruce Bochy seem to have it figured out. But then again, let's assume that Bruce Bochy came to Anaheim. Would things have been different? Maybe not. Maybe Bruce Bochy wouldn't have been successful because of the way our front office and especially the upper echelon of that front office is run. Because Joe Madden was a winner before he came to Anaheim, right?
Mm-hmm.
He won a championship with the Cubs. He made a World Series with the Rays. He had several deep playoff runs before coming back to Anaheim. Not to mention the fact that he was also a winner in Anaheim in the coaching staff. You know, was a part of many playoff teams, of course, the World Series team, all that. So Joe Madden was a champion coming to Anaheim.
Mm-hmm.
He was a guy we were all excited about. And he came back, and things are clearly different than when he left. And look what happened. It was the same song, the same dance, the same lack of support for the coaching staff, the team, the minor league, everything. And it collapsed. So, you know, maybe management isn't the issue here in Anaheim. Sure. Is it easy to look at the Rangers and be like, man, if we would have got Bruce Bochy, that would be us making a deep playoff run? Sure. But the Rangers don't have to deal with the front office issues that we do.
Yeah, I think there was two things to go along with that to piggyback. There was the injuries this year, and then there's also if you had Bochy here, like you said, you'd plug him in, but he would not be able to make the decisions. You know, the decisions are coming from up top, and I think that's what hurts things. I mean, if there wasn't that unwritten rule in baseball to where a manager on the way out can say, hey, you know what, I didn't like this, I didn't like that, they pissed me off here, I'm pretty sure we would have heard a lot more. You know, Madden, I think, is still being very vanilla about things, even though he wrote the book, even though he's got the podcast. He said some things, but I know there's more that he could say and outright. But I think in one way he'd like to come back to baseball. And I think if he does that, yes, that's his death sentence. And I think the same thing with Nevin. Nevin was just like, oh, I'm thankful for the opportunity. It's like, bro, you could tell his nuts were clipped. You know, he wasn't the greatest manager, but he could have did a lot more than what he did. And then as far as getting back to the Phillies real quick, I wanted to mention the first 5 games they had played really good against Arizona, but in the last 2 at home, they were swinging for the fences. And BLR did an Instagram post with interviewing the fans why they lost, and every last single one of them said they're overpriced players and they're swinging for the
saw
fences.
That interview.
They weren't trying to get fundamental hits like Arizona was, you know. It's
and they were all
funny.
complaining about that one song,
game plan and they lose.
They're all complaining about that one song. They're like, I never want to hear that song again.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that interview was classic. Here's the thing, dude. I'm so tired of East Coast fans pretending like they're the epitome of fans in, you know, each respective sport. I went to a Phillies game in April, and they got their cheeks clapped by the Rockies that game. Dude, they got cream pied by the Rockies. It was like 10-2. Bro. It was something like that. Those fans were so out of the game. They did not care. They were gone. They left by like the 6th, 7th inning. It was boring. They were quiet. And I'm just like all these Philly fans want to pretend like they're these hardcore fans that absolutely love their teams. Same thing with the Yankee game. Look at the TikTok video. Look at my YouTube vlog. The Yankee fans were quiet.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like I hate East Coast fans. I really do. They pretend like the sports world revolves around that. Nobody cares about you, your crappy food, your horrible accents.
Well, you know, a lot of that comes from the four-letter network. When they got started, they're East Coast based, and that's all they pushed. So, a lot of fans that would be fans of Midwest teams, of West Coast teams, gravitated to the East Coast because they were showed a lot, and you know they were premiered a lot, and then they were talked about all the time. It's rare when you have. I mean, obviously we have the MLB network, we have our own sports network. No matter what it is, whether it's Bally's or something else, that's the only people that'll talk West Coast. Everything, like you said, is East Coast. It's built better. You know that they have the stronger fans, like you said, but they're the whinier fans too when you lose, and there's always an
Absolutely.
excuse when you lose. So, um, getting to the Dodgers real quick. I
Yeah.
know you wanted to hit on that. I never laughed so hard because a friend of mine texted me. He's like, "Okay, so we just got clapped by the Padres last year, embarrassed by a division team that we owned, and they beat us when it count. Now we got the Diamondbacks doing it." He's like, "Who's next? The Rockies?" I just started busting up, bro.
Dude, I saw, I think I might have put it on our group chat. There was a tweet I saw that was like, oh, well, this is the first year in like, what's like almost 10 years. I think it was like 6 or 7 that neither the Astros or the Dodgers are in the World Series. And it's like, I think this puts an end to both respective dynasties. And I was like, dynasties? You can't have a dynasty if you have one legitimate championship between these two teams.
Yeah. That's a thing I was taught. It was since 2016 the first time we don't have either an Astro or a Dodger in the World Series. It's crazy to me because I saw this Dodgers video there this guy made on YouTube. He's like, it does not, and I talked with you off air about this. The guy was like, I am not going to take the Dodgers seriously in the regular season. There's no point. He said four times now that they've had 100 plus wins, 110 wins a couple times, and they're frauds in the playoffs. And he said out of the, I guess it was only, I think it was 4 out of the top 8 teams with the highest win percentage ever. And we're talking teams that go back to like 1906, 1907, when the records were skewed because of fewer teams, you know, talent being on some more than other teams. And he said that it's just record breaking how many the win loss ratio is, and then them not even make the World Series or them get beaten. You know, most of those teams that have those gigantic records win World Series, and the Dodgers continue to blow it in epic proportions.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a meme for a couple years now, but like now to just a new extent, right? It's just you have won nothing besides a ring pop. Um, those deep playoff runs haven't mattered for anything.
Mm-hmm.
You guys claim that you guys have all these stars, and it's just so funny to see an organization that on paper is doing everything the right way, but for whatever reason, they continuously, mess up. But I want to real quick because we can talk about the Dodgers forever, and I'm sure it'll come up again during the off season when things unfold for them. I want to talk about how this affects the Angels. So
Yes.
obviously the Rangers made it to the World Series. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
the Diamondbacks making it there, that doesn't affect us at all. But the Rangers, a division rival that none of us saw, A, making the playoffs when the season started, and B, none of us saw them making the World Series. And honestly, it's very feasible they could win. You never really want to bet against a Bruce Bochy team in the World Series. Okay, so with that being said, let's assume they win the World Series. Let's put on our make-believe glasses. They win the World Series. There's a parade in Arlington. So with that being said, how does this affect the Angels offseason and the outlook of the front office towards the Angels, in your opinion?
You know, it's hard to say because, bro, I want to say that the Astros going on their run, call it a dynasty, call it a championship run, whatever you want, should have changed the Angels' mindset too. Maybe it got them to go into the reload and not rebuild mode. But now you got two. If the Rangers, like you said, win the World Series, you got two champions in the AL West in the last 3 years, or 2 years. back to back. That's tough, man. That means you got to step your game up. And does Artie just panic and say we need to get this guy, and then just start it over again? Or because obviously you want to build something that leads to a world championship or at least a continual playoff contender. And we've talked about it a million times. It's going to take a rebuild to do that. We cannot just plug and play. It's not going to work anymore. So I think it's going to put more pressure on this front office. It's going to put more pressure on everybody. But how do they respond? I mean, based on on previous seasons, it's hard to put faith in them, bro.
The toughest part is, like I said, if this was a year or two into the future, we're talking 2026, and the Rangers made the World Series. Okay, yeah, we saw this coming.
Yep.
They had a good farm system. They signed Corey Seager, and really, you go down the list. The right signings, smart signings, everything panned out for them. Cool, they're in the World Series. But this is 2023. They are, 2-3 years ahead of schedule. Yeah. They're not going anywhere anytime soon. That farm system is stocked. And not to mention that at some point next season, they might get Jacob deGrom back for a late playoff push or for a deeper playoff run. Obviously they have an aging Scherzer still, and that's okay. They made the World Series. What if now they go balls deep to get Shohei Ohtani? They very well could. They have money. The Rangers have never been afraid to spend money, right? They gave Alex Rodriguez the biggest contract of all time years ago.
Yep.
They've had talent. They've had multiple pieces of talent. They're an organization that's either doing really well for a 10-year stretch or really bad for a 10-year stretch. There is no in-between for the Rangers. Okay, so you got them. You have the Astros. They're probably not going anywhere for, I say 2 or 3 more years. Eventually, they are going to start tapering off. Maybe this is kind of the start of that. Altuve is going to get old. Bregman's going to get old. These pieces are going to start getting old. But you also have the Seattle Mariners, who aren't going anywhere anytime soon, right? They made the playoffs last year. They pushed for the playoffs this year. Chances are they're going to do the same thing next year and the year afterward. Okay, and also you have Oakland, who started their rebuild this year. So realistically, 2 more years and they'll be a good team again if their pattern goes correctly? Actually, it might be next year. That's how Oakland works. All of a sudden, they're in the playoffs. Nobody saw it coming. They are what the Texas Rangers were this year.
Yeah, I'm scared, bro, to be honest with you, because I'm scared and I'm hungry. The Astros, when they got a taste of winning, they embraced it. Their ownership went for it, and they continue to sign the players and continue to draft the players or trade for the players to keep themselves winning. And I think the Texas Rangers, with this run, and you think about it, Seager wasn't the hero, Simeon wasn't the hero, what is his name? Garcia was. He just went off in that series to finish them off, the Astros. And, they got good pitching from Montgomery, a late season trade from St. Louis. When they're thinking DeGrom and Scherzer would be their aces, it was Montgomery. And Leclerc came through in a tough spot there late. The bullpen did too. And what I mean by that is if Texas just gets a run, it's going to scare me too, because they're going to get, if they win, they're going to get a taste of it, and they're going to be like, we're Texas, we're big bad Texas. We play next to the Cowboys. We want to be that team too and be big bad in Texas. We want to take over this. And so their main fight is Houston. And if they can outshine Houston, they will. And to have 2 powerhouses, like you said, then add Seattle, then have Oakland on the come up, where does that leave our Angels?
Yeah, this is going to be a very pivotal offseason, because this front office needs to make the right decision, and I don't think retooling is it. And we know it isn't, because it hasn't worked for, about a decade. And with that being said, it's only going to get worse now that Texas is going to be a legitimate contender for years to come. Houston is who they are. Seattle, we already went through the list. And I'm glad you brought up Adolis Garcia. That's what I was trying to pull up while you were talking. I mean, this is a guy who's a career 244 hitter. Legitimately, how many people knew his name before this season? He wasn't a name that was really talked about, right? You heard his name. We knew his name because he was in the division. But if you went up to somebody in Pittsburgh, you're like, who's Adolis Garcia? They're, who?
Yeah.
You go up to somebody in Pittsburgh now who likes baseball. Who's Adolis Garcia? That's the dude. That's a bad man. He single-handedly defeated the Houston Astros. He unconsensually cream pied on their stomachs, the Houston Astros. That's who Adolis Garcia is. And honestly, dare I say, I kind of like him, dude. The guy's freaking nasty. He's a good player. He plays with heart. He wants to be there. And that's what we haven't had here in a while, with the exception of Otani and then, obviously Neto, Ohapi, some of the younger cats. We haven't had a guy before this season, really, who's stepped up, who looks like they want to be there, who's happy to be there, who fires up the boys. It's something we're not used to here. You're not going to get that from Trout. You're going to get that from Rendon.
Yeah, and you don't see any of the handshakes, the stuff that other teams do that are in the postseason. The way that losing teams too, when they're there, they show why they're there. And I think the reason is again, go to our pre-games and watch our players not really do any kind of drills. I mean, again, a team like Texas is fundamentally sound. They're running their drills. I mean, today was another day of practice for them. I was watching MLB Network this morning. They were out there. Scherzer was getting in a bullpen session. They do this kind of stuff during the regular season. It's not preached in practice on our team. That's why we have the injuries that we have, and it's very frustrating because even if we could contend, Fernando, we're getting too many injuries to where we can't, even if we put a solid team out there.
Yeah, by the way, they're hiring was it physical trainers or whatever?
That's that transition I did right there.
Yeah, exactly. So if you guys are interested, make sure to apply. I mean, I think if you're working at McDonald's, you might be overqualified. If you can see your toes, you're overqualified.
Apply now at Indeed.com.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. No, apply now on. You have to send your carrier pigeon down to the AM 830 studios to apply. Okay, so I know we got to start wrapping up here. So let's leave this to 2 minutes because we're going to be talking about this again probably next week.
Okay.
So managerial options, there's a lot of names that are floating out there. I'm sure you've heard them all, and I'm sure the fans have heard them all too. The biggest one that everyone keeps kind of going back to, I heard Buck Showalter a lot, and all of a sudden there's a report coming out, and it's kind of a rumor. I can't officially report it with my sources. Skip Shoemaker from the Marlins apparently is interested in the Angels' job. Between those two guys, who do you like? You like Buck Showalter, who's been there, done that? Or do you like Skip Shoemaker from the Marlins?
I would go with Shoemaker only because he's been around a team like this. He was there. Say what you want to say about Ing, the one that was let go by the Marlins, but basically they started over. They hit the reset, and Shoemaker was part of that and helped that team get good. So yeah, I would take Shoemaker.
Okay. For the record, the GM who walked away from the Marlins, I would not mind if the Angels gave her a baseball executive position, because apparently that's what she wants. She doesn't want a GM role. She wants a role in the front office. Fire Dennis Cool, give her a job, because she knows what she's doing. She knows how to build a winner. Look what happened with the Marlins. The Marlins were dog water a couple years ago.
I agree.
She built a winner. Seriously. Put baseball people in charge, Artie.
Yeah, Marlins are literally a bat or two away from being a real serious contender in that East.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they made the playoffs this year. I mean, they made the playoffs 2 out of the last 3 years?
Yeah.
Something like that. So once again, I mean, did it the right way. That's fine. Give her a job, Artie. Give her a job.
But that's the kind of manager I would want. I would want Gill to get a shot. I would want Shoemaker to get a shot. Erstad, I don't know if he has enough experience, but I don't want a Showalter. Showalter's sort of like a team on the cusp, a Bochy stepping into a team that's almost there, needs a couple more players, and then boom, you could take off with him. But I just don't think he's the dude. I think they're looking to have a strict manager in there and discipline. That's good, but I think he's a little too much discipline.
Yeah, so I mean, time will tell. Like I said, I'm sure we're going to be talking about that plenty. And if the breaking news hits, expect us to come on and share that news immediately on the Angels manager and our opinions, especially since we're also looking for a new pitcher coach, because Matt Wise is now the bullpen coach for the White Sox. Talk about a demotion, huh?
Whew. Yeah, I mean, look, there's nowhere to go but up in Chicago, because that staff had the highest ERA, dude.
Hey, at least he gets some good pizza. At least he gets some good pizza.
Oh, it's pies. Pies, remember?
Sure. Yeah, no. Go to Giordano's. All right, man. That's what I've got as
Okay,
we
I think
work
we're
on our new
good.
format
Except
here.
one other thing we're gonna bring up is we're gonna be doing more shows and more of a condensed version. So no more of your hour and a half shows that we've gotten into. We're gonna break those up into parts if we have to. But there's gonna be some big announcements moving forward as far as our programming and everything else like that. We don't have the time to get into it, but that's if you want to add anything to that, Fernando.
What I want to add is I still haven't sent out the stuff from the backpack drive. If you guys want something, DM us because I know two people who are waiting for their stuff. I've been traveling a lot. Todd can confirm that. So
Hmm.
now that I'm going to be home here, I'm going to be gone tomorrow, but I'll be back on Saturday. I'm going to plan on shipping the stuff next week. So if you want any of those prizes, please DM us. I'm going to try to rewatch that video too, so I can send out messages and we can get all those prizes out. We still have them. I promise. They're sitting there in the closet. So, you don't have to worry. I didn't sell anything. I didn't give it away to somebody else. We have all your prizes. I promise.
There you go. Well, that's the update. And for Halos in the Infield podcast flagship, we're going to have more announcements coming up, like you said. And you will be getting your stuff from there from the raffle. And a lot of cool things to be talked about here in the off season. So for Todd Fox and
The Lone Star Halo.
have a good evening, morning, or night.
Halos in the infield. Hey, 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 Halos.